He broke into a US president's home, stole a gun, bought a yacht, then used it to lure men in and make them disappear. He didn't kill for money, not for love, not even for revenge. He killed because he wanted to. His name was Panzram. And what he confessed before they hanged him is still haunting the FBI to this day. In 9208, inside the cold gray walls of Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, a man sat alone in his cell. His name was Panzram. Most Americans have never heard of him, but if they had, they wouldn't forget. At 39, Carl was no longer the ghostly figure who once slipped across borders, left trails of bodies, and vanished without a trace. Prison had aged him in ways time never could. His body was lean, his face marked by deep lines, the kind not from laughter or years, but from pain, from anger, from never resting. He didn't speak much, never caused trouble. He just existed, quietly, almost invisibly, like a man who had already left the world, even if his body hadn't caught up. Then one day, a young god named Henry Lesser did something small, but strange. He gave Carl a pencil and a stack of old paper. No one asked Carl to write. No one expected him to. But Carl took it, silently, almost like he'd been waiting for this moment. And then he began. What poured out wasn't a cry for help. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It was a declaration of war, written in graphite, the first sentence on the first page. I hate the whole damn human race. Not a metaphor, not a figure of speech. That was Carl's truth, his worldview, his legacy. Night after night, Carl wrote. While others slept, he filled page after page with the most brutal kind of honesty. His story, but not the way society likes to hear it. He didn't say he was sorry. He didn't blame his mother or poverty or God. He simply told the truth, his truth, and dared the world to look away. He confessed to things no man should ever admit to, and he did it without shame. Because Carl wasn't seeking redemption. He didn't believe in good or evil. He believed in power. And for him, the only time he ever felt alive was when he was taking that power from someone else. This was not a man losing his mind. This was a man who had already made peace with who and what he was. Panzram didn't die on the day they hanged him. He died years earlier, the moment he stopped believing in people. But before they dropped the trapdoor beneath his feet, he left something behind. A confession, a manifesto, a warning. And now, nearly a century later, we're finally going to read it. Panzram wasn't born a monster. He was born on a farm in East Grand Forks, Minnesota in 1891. Just another poor kid in a poor town, surrounded by cold winters and harder men. His father left when Carl was still young, walked out one day and never came back. That left his mother, a stern, exhausted woman, alone to raise a family. Carl never blamed her, not really. But she had no warmth to give and no time to notice when her youngest son started slipping away. By age 7, Carl was stealing. By 11, he was drinking. At 12, the state sent him to a reform school. That's where everything changed. The Minnesota State Training School was supposed to correct bad behavior. It claimed to teach discipline, morals, religion. But what it taught Carl was something else entirely: pain, humiliation, and how to survive by becoming crueler than the people in charge. The beatings started immediately. They used leather straps soaked in salt water. They tied boys to wooden boards in the basement, sometimes for hours, sometimes overnight. They called it character building. Carl called it what it was: torture. He once wrote, "Every time they whipped me, I got smarter. Every time they punished me, I learned how to hide what I was becoming." And what he became was a mirror of everything that place stood for. He stopped trusting people, stopped believing in justice, stopped feeling, except for one thing: hatred. Not just toward the guards, not just toward the school, toward everyone, the entire world. The transformation wasn't sudden, it was slow, deliberate, like rust spreading through iron, quiet but unstoppable. By the time Carl left the school, he wasn't a boy anymore. He was something else: hard, cold, detached. He had learned a lesson that would shape the rest of his life. If you want to survive in a world built on violence, you better be better at it than the men holding the whip. And Carl, he learned fast. By the time Carl Panzram was 16, the world had already lost him. He wasn't searching for purpose. He wasn't running from demons. He was becoming one. He drifted across the country, hopping freight trains, sleeping in alleyways, stealing whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. But unlike most drifters, Carl didn't steal to eat. He stole because he liked it. He broke into homes not out of desperation, but out of defiance. He picked fights because pain didn't scare him. It excited him. He was tall, strong, with a permanent scowl and eyes that rarely blinked. He could lie with a straight face, change names like changing shirts, and disappear before anyone could ask the second question. He was a ghost in plain sight. One night in New Haven, Connecticut, he did something unthinkable. He broke into the home of a former president, William Howard Taft. He stole jewelry, money, and most importantly, a .45 caliber pistol. He later used the money to buy a boat, not a rowboat, not a dinghy, an actual yacht. Most men would have used that as a ticket to a better life. Carl used it as a floating crime scene. He cruised the East Coast, luring young men aboard with promises of work or food. They never came back. Later, in his written confession, Carl described the killings in disturbing detail. He would shoot them, strangle them, sometimes tie weights to their bodies, and dump them into the Atlantic, just to watch them sink. No motive, no passion, no regret. When asked why he did it, he gave the same answer every time: "Because I felt like it." Some men kill for money, some kill for revenge. Carl killed because the opportunity was there. And that, more than anything else, is what made him terrifying. He wasn't a monster from a horror movie. He didn't stalk his prey in the shadows. He offered them kindness, smiled, then snuffed them out. He didn't leave behind clues. He didn't need trophies. He didn't even bother hiding the bodies. The ocean took care of that. For a time, he moved up and down the coast like a shark, feeding, vanishing, and reappearing hundreds of miles away. He didn't want to be famous. He wanted to be forgotten, because forgotten men, he believed, could do anything. By 928, Carl Panzram had been in and out of more prisons than he could remember. He'd used dozens of fake names, escaped more times than most people tie their shoes, and left behind enough bodies to haunt 3 lifetimes. But now he was back behind bars. For good. Arrested in Washington, D.C. for burglary. Carl had finally been identified. The lies, the aliases, the vanishing acts, none of them worked anymore. They sentenced him to Leavenworth, a place known for holding the worst of the worst. For once, Carl didn't try to fight it. No escape plans, no fake repentance. He walked in, silent, but not defeated. He knew this was the end, and strangely, he didn't seem to mind. It was in that prison cell, in the heavy quiet of early mornings and late nights, that Carl began to write. Not letters, not pleas. He wrote a manifesto, a eulogy for humanity, in his own words. Night after night, he filled page after page. No poetry, no emotion, just brutal truth. He wrote about the boys he lured onto his yacht, about the 6 men he led into the African bush and never brought back, about the oil refinery he burned to the ground in New Jersey because, as he put it, it made me angry just to look at it. Each story darker than the last, each line a punch to the gut, and yet none of it felt exaggerated. No bragging, no boasting, just facts, chilling, clear, and calculated. He once said, "If I had more education, I would have built bombs, planted them in cities, not for politics, not for money, just to watch the world burn." And the way he wrote it, it didn't sound like a fantasy. It sounded like a plan that almost happened. The young guard, Henry Lesser, the same man who gave Carl that pencil and paper, kept bringing him more, quietly. Not because he agreed with Carl, but because he saw something no one else had seen in him before. A man, not a monster. And maybe, just maybe, the truth deserved to be heard. Carl never once softened his tone. He never asked for sympathy. In fact, the more he wrote, the colder he seemed. He described the human race the way most people describe rotting meat. He said he saw no difference between theft and murder. Both gave him the same feeling. Power. "Hurting people made me feel alive," he wrote. "That's the only feeling I ever trusted." And still, in all that darkness, there was a strange kind of clarity. Carl wasn't insane. He wasn't lost. He was exact, purposeful, entirely self-aware. He knew he was evil. He embraced it. And worse, he blamed us for it. "I was no different than any other boy," he wrote, "but you treated me like an animal, so I became one." This was not a confession meant to heal. It was a mirror, held up to society, daring us to look at what we had created. Not just a killer, but a product of neglect, violence, and institutional cruelty. Carl didn't write to save himself. He wrote because someone finally asked him to. And the world hasn't been the same since. By 9:30, Carl Panzram had said everything he wanted to say. In thousands of words scrawled across prison paper, he described a life forged in violence and driven by hate. Not for sympathy, not for fame, just for truth. His version of it. The guards came for him early that morning. He didn't resist, didn't speak, didn't pray. When the chaplain approached with a Bible, Carl spat in his face. When the executioner asked if he had any last words, he smiled, cold and crooked, and said, "Yeah, hurry it up. I could kill 10 men while you're fooling around." That was the last thing he ever said. Then the trap door opened, and the man the world never bothered to understand was gone. He was 39. No one claimed the body. The world moved on. But his words didn't. His manuscript, written in secret, would become a mirror, not of Carl, but of us. Of what happens when systems break instead of protect. When pain goes unanswered. When boys become monsters, not by chance, but by design. Carl Panzram didn't believe in redemption. He didn't believe in justice. He believed in revenge. And in his own words, "My only regret is that I didn't kill more." But here's what most people don't know. Carl wasn't the only one. While his story was fading into obscurity across the country, another name was beginning to rise. Another killer, smarter, more charming, just as dangerous. And unlike Carl, he wanted the spotlight. His name was Earl Nelson. And what he did made even seasoned detectives lose sleep. So what do we do with stories like this? We could call him evil and turn the page, or we could look harder, deeper, into the systems that claim to protect and the cracks that let monsters slip through. Carl Panzram didn't ask to be remembered, but maybe we should remember him anyway. Not for what he did, but for what he became and why. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.